1.
Hello and welcome to Get Recc'd. I am the first member of the wrecking crew, Stephen Falgout.
And I'm Louis Falgout. However, I am sadly not a part of the
The
Recc'd crew.
wrecking. Oh no, you didn't get the memo?
No,
Oh, the big boss man came in. He said, "Hey, you got to rebrand yourself, you guys. Marketing needs you to be
yeah.
more marketable."
And as everybody knows, one of the most popular hip things these days are wrecking crews.
Yeah, wrecking crews are really in. Everyone's all about construction these days. You go on Twitter, it's like, stop with the construction memes, guys. Come on.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's just like we were
Can
really
you
fortunate.
construct a better meme? Am I right?
Oh, because they're like construction guys.
Right.
That's good. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so
we kind of lucked out on that one because, I mean, our name is Get Recc'd, which I feel like translates very easy into wrecking crew. So it just everything kind of came about at the right time.
yeah, it just all fell into place really. It was just the perfect timing. So it's unfortunate that usually what happens in our bits is that I'm or you are the only one who are a part of the bit. But what can you say? I mean, take it up with marketing, guys. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes that just happens.
Sometimes it just happens. What are
Can't
you gonna
blame us.
do?
You can't.
Yeah.
You really can't blame
What,
us.
when you have all these drill bits lying around because you're in the wrecking crew, it's like, what are you gonna do with it? I
And
don't
the
know.
more it goes, the funnier it gets.
Yeah, we could keep going. This is the first episode of our construction podcast. We're actually rebranding the whole podcast, and now we're going to be wrecked with a W. So, welcome everyone.
Yeah, welcome to this train wreck. And I think that
Well, that's a great segue.
is it?
No, it's not, because we're going to start with what I gave to you this week. Our pal in construction, Gerard the Completionist. So today, for this episode, I gave you the Completionist. Gerard is a member of the YouTube community, so this is a YouTube channel. He reviews games, but he reviews games in a very specific way. Specifically, he completes games to 100% completion or the equivalent thereof, depending on the game. And then he'll give his thoughts based on, one, just general themes within the game, review topics such as story and presentation, that sort of thing. But then also, two, with the light of how it is as a 100% completion bonus. So with that, I will turn it over to you to talk a little bit about what you thought.
Okay, so I'm counting here. I watched 12 videos of Gerard the Completionist. And I guess I'll start with the most obvious thing. Given that this is a game review channel, I think the obvious question is he good at reviewing video games? I mean, if he's not, you could always make up for that with comedy, which we'll get to. But let's start there. And I think that is the best aspect of this channel, which is good because that's the entire point. I think that watching through these videos, I honestly believe that these videos would be a good source for deciding whether you wanted to buy a game or not.
And the other thing to mention here is that while he is giving his opinion in his reviews, he's not necessarily giving a score, more giving a rating based on how it falls as to whether you should rent the game, play the game, finish the game, or 100% complete the game.
Yeah, so it's like a scale as to how much of a completionist's game is it. So each of the reviews are like broken down into sections, and from some of the older videos that I saw, it seemed to have more sections than it does now, and the sections were more specific. So you'd have a section on gameplay, story, maybe graphics, maybe not. I forget what they were, but gameplay and
I think
story.
there's like presentation.
Yeah,
general
presentation. So yeah, so like, and then there was a section for the final level, which was basically the spoilers section. And now he does sections as well, but I don't really understand them. But anyway, through breaking the game down into sections, you would think that this would make the reviews more structured, but I wouldn't really say it does. It's kind of awkward, honestly. Like, I don't know. If he just hadn't have shown these little sections and had just talked about it the way he was, I feel like the reviews would actually be a lot better. But regardless, you do get a well-rounded idea of the game he's talking about because he makes sure to talk about each aspect of what makes a game good. So on the video gaming or video game reviewing aspect of this channel, I really don't have any problems. I actually think that he's good, and I feel like watching his reviews would make you want to buy a game that he says is really good. So on the baseline level there, you know, it's good. It's quality. But I will say, I don't feel like he stands out among any of the other, like, straight game reviewing channels like this. Like, and not even just channels, I mean just, like, in general. So that even count, like, your IGN video reviews. I mean, he's better than IGN. But I just mean in terms of his presentation, in terms of his reviewing style, he reminds me a lot of something like that, or, like, any of those other publications that do video counterparts. It reminds me a lot of that kind of stuff. But I guess the one thing that would make him different is that he does it from a completionist's angle, or at least he does in name, where it's like, you know, his reviews are centered around how fun the game is to 100%. And this is where I thought stuff started to get kind of average, because even with this shtick, you could call it, I don't think that he stood out in any way. Like, honestly, if he didn't brand himself this way, I don't even think I would have picked up on the fact that he was focusing on this, because he really doesn't focus on it. It's part of every review. He mentions it in every review. It's relevant to every review, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's the focus of every review. And in fact, in the earlier videos, he kind of siphoned this part of the review down to like one or two sections that he would talk about in terms of actually the completionist angle of the game. So,
and even still, it usually ends up being the very final section, which I think is interesting because, so it's the main gimmick, and he does this, and he produces a video every week, which means he is putting in a ton of hours. In fact, he even usually, what I like about his reviews is that he quantifies the number of hours that he puts into these things. And it is insane to be doing that every single week. And now he's doing it twice a week, because something that happened on his channel where all of the old reviews, for reasons I won't get into here, but for all of his old reviews were he had to take them down. And so now he's basically like re-reviewing those like first 100-something reviews that he looked into. So every week, 2 times a week, he's putting in the amount of hours to 100% complete these games. And the amount of time that he spends talking about that effort is probably the shortest amount of time within the video.
Yeah.
Which I thought was weird.
I guess it's odd, because I feel like there is definitely room for a reviewer like this. Like a reviewer who goes in for the because I mean, there are a lot of people who are going to buy games and they want to 100% those games. And I mean, you know, I can even think of times when I've 100%ed a game and been really dissatisfied with the fact that I did that because I got nothing for it and didn't feel satisfied. So I actually feel like that kind of review is actually really welcome. I just don't feel like Gerard's content here really scratches that itch. You know, it's like, take your standard video game review and add a section for completionists, and that's basically what this is, you know? So I wouldn't say it's what I expected it was going to be, which was going to be like a really in-depth breakdown of what it's like to complete these games. And I made sure to watch reviews of games that would be more suited for that. And he still didn't really ever get into it in a way where I felt like that was the central theme of the review. Like I watched Sonic Mania, for example, which I know there's a lot of extra content in that game, which he covered the extra content, but did it feel like he was focusing on, is this fun to 100%? Not really. So on that front, but I don't want to make it sound like I think that his reviews are bad, because I don't. Like I said, I actually think that among a channel like this, among content like this, I think that this is among the better end, where I feel like his reviews and his tastes and his understanding of what makes a game good is pretty high. So I feel like he's probably a fairly reliable source for that.
Yeah, and I'm going to disagree a little bit with what you were mentioning about how this feels like a regular review, because I do think the one thing for me that makes him stand out is that I really feel like he has a very distinct voice. So the one problem with general gameplay or game review channels, so you compared him to IGN. The one problem there is that reviews in that way, reviewers don't have a voice. They are really tied to the publication, and they're trying to get these reviews out the door. So I never feel like in a standard review in that situation where you really understand what the reviewer is into or not into, and there's no dividing line there. They're just putting out a score, basically. And then I would compare him to some of the other game reviewers that I've seen on YouTube. So I think of like, because there's two classifications, I would say. There are people on YouTube who review games but not in a game review. So for instance, people like Pro Jared or others, where they are looking back on games and talking about games, but not necessarily in such a way as to produce a review. Whereas I feel like he falls more in line with someone like an Angry Joe, who are like, their channel is a game review channel. And I feel like comparatively there, I still feel like he has a very solid and very distinct voice. And I think it comes down to the structure as well. So you hit on the structure. I do think one of the things that can that holds back his reviews sometimes is that he follows a very specific format. So you talked about it. He has he goes through story, then presentation, or whatever his categories are. But his categories tend to blend. So I feel like there's not much clarity in the categories that he talks about in the reviews, but the content that he brings to each of those categories is very solid. And so then to the final point, which is like him as a completionist, so like the most important part of his channel, I do definitely agree with you there, though. It's like he's reviewing these things in such a way where he's reviewing them from the standpoint of having completed them, but the issue is he doesn't spend a lot of time on it. Most of the reviews boil down to, in that specific situation, so most of the reviews boil down to, I completed the game, I didn't get anything for it, don't complete the game, honestly.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I think I made a mistake in comparing him to IGN, because I do agree that he stands out from them, and that's only because he's independent, though. I don't think it's because his style of review is altogether different, I guess is maybe what I should have said. Like, you're right that they're tied to a publication, so that was a bad example. But as an independent reviewer, his content just reminds me of that oeuvre. I wasn't trying to say he was equivalent in quality. But I think that another, and I guess that the only thing is like, I went into this channel watching this channel. I wasn't watching this because I wanted to see a review of a game I like or something like that. Although I did watch like a review or two of games that I've played and enjoyed. So when I went into it, I was like, okay, well, I'm trying to see what I'm going to get out of this. And what I got out of it was not much, because they're game reviews of games I'm probably not going to play. So I was like, okay, well, I tried to think about it from, let me watch this as if I were a video game consumer and I wanted to watch a review to see if the game was good. And yes, I would probably go. There are other reviewers who I would go to before him. I'll say that. However, I would go to him before a lot of others as well. So that's something that I can say about him. I want to touch on something, though, that Jaquetto here in the chat actually mentioned, which I was going to get to. And yes, Gerard attempts to inject character into the reviews in the same way many other reviewers do, by adding a joke here or there. Now, I won't say it's ever obnoxious. I won't say it's ever omnipresent. I wouldn't classify him as a comedy reviewer by any stretch. However, I did not enjoy the humor in these reviews. In fact, I kind of hated it. And the only thing it did was break up the reviews, which I generally thought were very good. And I thought that because they're not comedy reviews and the comedy wasn't the focus, as a result, the editing didn't emphasize the comedy in a way that made any sense. And often it just broke everything up and was really awkward, and I didn't like that. So that hurt my view of these reviews as well, although not too much. I honestly think I would have preferred these videos if he didn't inject any jokes into them whatsoever. And I'm not telling him how to run his channel, but that's just how I feel. Like I think because I think that his reviewing style is really good. I just didn't like his humor.
So did you see any videos with Todd? Is that I think it's Todd. It's like a guy
I saw other people. Who was he?
Yeah, he's like the guy that they consistently make fun of.
Oh, yes. Yeah, what was the one? It was were they talking about Sonic, I think it was in Sonic Mania even. It was one of the Sonic ones, I think, where he was like playing the game and like he couldn't tell the difference between I got the joke. I just didn't I did not think it was funny at all.
I want to ask you a very specific thing. How do you feel about the surrounding structure of the review?
You mean like
so every review, Gerard basically comes on camera first, talks a little bit about what he's going to talk about, and then gets into the review.
Well, more often than not, he talks about how you can buy t-shirts, and then he gets into the review. And that was really weird, because normally when YouTubers shill for their merch, which I'm fine with, they do it at the end. But he did it like in the beginning before the videos even started, and then like they have a skip button or something. He starts talking about the game, then he gets on camera and tells you to buy his shirt, and then he talks about the game again, which that I really did not like. And but I mean, him getting on camera and then getting in and talking about the review is pretty standard. I've seen that a lot. It's fine. It was fine. Now, as for the structure of the review itself, which he's changed since before, the original one I talked about was like each category. Again, I thought it was awkward. I thought it was unnecessary. But the change he made to it is honestly even worse. I mean, before he had the problem where he had a final level section, which was just really weird and unnecessary. But now he has like undefined kind of vague sections, which he has this graphic for, and it's like really awkward. And I just, if there is something that I would add as constructive criticism specifically, it's that I honestly think he should just do away with this entirely. Like, I think the reviews are kind of long, so I understand why he chooses to do it. Maybe it's a review that could be broken up, but I just don't think it's broken up in a way that really works. The final thing I want to touch on.
I feel like for me it's more. I think there just needs to be a little more clarity on what each section holds and stick to the section, because I do think having that structure. And I like the way the graphic is presented too, because it's like you're moving through each section like it's like a trail of breadcrumbs, right?
Sure.
It's a great way to have like a very structured agenda to the video that the viewer can follow along with. But I agree, a lot of the times the sections just blend into each other. In fact, a lot of the times he'll talk about the next section before even having gotten to the next section.
Yeah.
So just having a little more clarity and what each of those are, I think would be good, because I like the idea of the structure that he goes through to get through the review.
Yeah,
because it's something that you can replicate too, which makes it really great, because then each video, what specific things he's going to talk about to review each of the different games. The only issue is, again, that there isn't complete clarity on what each of those sections entails.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely true. But and again, I actually think that it was better
So
before.
with that being said, if you go to the Yeti.com, you can get our new Get Recc'd T-shirt.
It's a baseball themed Get Recc'd
in
T-shirt.
stores. Yeah, it's a baseball tee in stores for limited time. Check it out.
Yeah. But I don't know if you agree. Do you agree that it was better before? Because I honestly think the sections were clearer and he stuck to them better before the new graphic came in.
Yeah, because those were very, very specific sections, almost too specific. So I think this is like overcorrecting the opposite way now.
Because one of the problems was, like there was the final level section, which like, why would you have that? That's so weird. Yeah. But and now, so I understand why. But I mean, you could have corrected it by just taking out that section, and I don't know. I don't know that he really needs sections at all.
Yeah, and that was not even the first one that he had. That was like he had a structure, then it changed for the one that you're talking about, then it changed again to this most recent one.
Yeah, I will say I am kind of vaguely aware of what happened to all the old videos, but I did actually, somebody re-uploaded one on Daily Motion of Mario 64, and I didn't watch the whole thing because I didn't feel like it counted, because technically it's not on the channel, but I watched a little bit of it, and it did look like it was somewhat different, but I didn't watch the whole video. So as of the new crop of videos where it's just Gerard, that was kind of the final thing I want to touch on. Something that I absolutely dreaded was his and this is very minor, by the way, so don't get me wrong, but I do not care for his intro. I do not care for it. That is like, and it's updated multiple times, and I don't feel like it got any better. I just feel like it stayed the same. That is very it felt very gamer to me. I was just like, oh, okay, all right. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where
I know what you're talking about.
And he gets a beard. Yeah, okay.
Where he like levels up.
Yeah, really not a fan of that one. But that's super minor. It's just at the beginning of every video, so that kind of bothered me. How much more do you have to say? Because I don't have much more to say.
Yeah, I think that's my general thoughts. I think that his channel's only getting better. I mean, we did touch on his like the structure, so and clearly he's still working on it. But I mean, the one thing to mention is his videos are incredibly well polished.
Yeah,
you could tell a ton of work goes into, I mean, as I mentioned, first of all, a ton of work goes into playing the games, like a ridiculous amount of time. Sometimes it's over 200 hours for a game, which is insane. And then a ton of work and polish goes into the video itself, and you can definitely feel that in every video.
For sure.
So
I'll kind of wrap it up now. Again, it's we've run into this problem before, but scoring a YouTube channel is not the easiest thing in the world. But
yeah, we're giving a score to a review channel.
I'm reviewing a review right now, so that's fun. Or reviewing a reviewer. But I guess I'll say like 6, I guess. 6 out of 10, you know, and maybe my criteria for scoring YouTube channel is how much I got out of it myself. Like, how likely am I to want to subscribe? I didn't subscribe, and I don't really plan to watch more. But I will say that if there's a game that were coming out that I wanted to get and wanted to watch reviews before I got it, one of the videos I'd watch would probably be a completionist video of it, if he did one, honestly, because again, I think that for that purpose, I think this is actually pretty good. And if I ever saw him review a game I really like, I'd probably watch that as well. Like, I wouldn't avoid the Completionist by any stretch of the imagination. I just feel that, you know, they're very good reviews, but I think they may be polished to a fault, to a point where I don't really think that they had much of a character to them. I don't really feel like he stood out. I mean, and again, that a lot of that comes down to the fact that I don't play a lot of video games anyway, so this isn't the kind of content I would be looking for. So, like, if I were to watch somebody who reviewed games, it has to be somebody who, like, really stood out, of which there are a few personalities, but, like, I wouldn't necessarily watch somebody like the Completionist, who really is just a straight-up game reviewer, beyond anything else. He may have his own kind of shtick, but only kinda. That being said, yeah, I mean, would I recommend him if you play video games? I guess I would. I mean, his reviews are solid. I think you could get something out of them. So that's all I really have to say about that.
Yeah, the other thing that I would mention as like a final mention is I feel like, and this is I don't, this isn't a good or bad thing necessarily, but I do feel like he tends to usually be very positive on games. In fact, I can think of maybe only a handful of games that he did not at least recommend to play. And even those that he only recommended to play, very few and far between. Usually the review ends up being a finish it, which is kind of like, don't spend the effort to 100% complete it, but definitely play it all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one thing to note. But I really like this channel. I watch it quite a bit, actually, because a lot of the times he has a really good balance between like brand new releases, which actually can be kind of hard. That's the one thing I would mention. Like, if you're going to use his channel to review and to get thoughts on a brand new release, do keep in mind he does 100% complete the game. So he does go into like way massive spoiler territory.
Yeah. And
So
he
a lot
doesn't
of
even
times,
warn about that
and
anymore.
he doesn't even warn about that. So I think it's just a nature of the channel.
He used to.
Yeah, he used to. It's just the nature of the channel at this point. It's like, you know what you're kind of getting into. So actually from that standpoint, it's hard to watch him. Like, when I picked up the newest God of War, I wanted to watch his video, but I was like, well, I really can't yet before I purchase this because I don't want and it's spoiled. So that's just one little caveat. But yeah, I really like this channel. I'll watch his reviews. What I was going to say is he strikes a good balance between old stuff. So he'll go back and revisit old games, and then new stuff. So like brand new stuff. I was actually introduced to his channel on one of the Kingdom Hearts videos. So he reviews a whole range of stuff from RPGs to non-RPGs, whatever it might be. So I'd probably go a little higher on this. I'd give it probably around an 8. Like I said, I watch his videos quite a bit. I like his videos a lot. And yeah, I definitely recommend his channel if you're just interested in games. Specifically, I would say, pick out some of his reviews of games, just like you did. Pick out some of his reviews of games that you might be interested in or have some fond memories of. He takes a little bit of a different spin in the 100% category. So it's kind of my thoughts there.
Yeah. All right. So I think we'll move on to your section, Steven.
So speaking of train wreck, what a perfect segue.
It's a train wreck. Get wrecked. Yeah, so I recommended Steven the 2016 film Norm of the North. This film stars Rob Schneider as a CGI polar bear who twerks. That's all I'm going to say. You can start.
So Norm of the North is a film about a polar bear. He is named Norm. He is played by Rob Schneider, who really just gave it his all, let me tell you. Rob Schneider really had just a Oscar-winning performance in this role.
Well, I do have a spoiler tag, so when we get into spoilers, you'll need to tell me because it's very important that people don't get Norm of the North.
What if this is a spoiler? Who is going to watch this?
Listen, people want to see this film, Steven. You don't understand.
Yeah, it was the hot film of 2016.
Oh, God. For me.
I mean, just look at this image we have on the screen right now. That should tell you enough about this dumb movie. This is. I'm gonna sum up my thoughts for you in one sentence. I was so bored, and the movie was dragging on for so long that I looked at the time and I said, "There's no way this movie is not almost over." It had been 15 minutes. I looked again. It was 40 minutes. I looked again. It was not even an hour. And the movie was nowhere close to being done. So I'm just gonna... this was just a travesty. I'm just gonna walk through my notes.
No
from
spoilers.
And no spoilers. God, no spoilers. We wouldn't want that, would we? So first of all, I just want to say I watched this. Let me shill for just a second here. I watched this on the great Amazon Prime service.
It's free on there right now.
and it's free on there right now. So if you want to go check it out, and please do.
Yeah, give Jeff Bezos money.
Amazon Prime has this X-ray thing where at any point in time in the movie you can kind of scroll over and it tells you which actors or what songs are being played. At the very end of this movie, it said, I don't know if this is true or not, because I was like, I do not give them enough credit to be able to call this, but it said that the name of this film is a reference to the 1922 film Nanook of the North. And I saw that, and I said, I have a feeling that no one on this writing staff had even heard of that before. There is no way.
Hey, you don't know. Maybe they're big film buffs.
It is a 1922 American silent documentary film.
Oh, yeah. Listen, Steven, you know the people who could make a film of this caliber are massively into film.
Big silent film fans,
definitely,
for sure.
And you can tell. See, and that's the thing. Like a great cartoon, it can have a lot of humor in purely.
I wish this film was silent.
It learns that from silent film, Steven. All of the great visual humor in Norm of the North.
If no one talked and nothing happened, I would be much happier than what happened on the screen. Okay, so I just want to start by saying this film opens with a zoom in to these groups of lemmings that you can see here on the screen, the little furry guys. These lemmings, which I have to imagine they were hoping to become the next like penguins of Madagascar or the minions, because these things do not go away. They are there from literally the opening minute of the film throughout the entire end, and then they have a huge part in the post credits or in the during credit scene too. It's like they could not get rid of these things. And I didn't understand the point of any of the beginning of this movie. So it zooms into the lemmings, you see some seals, and Norm is then trying to catch a seal and murder it, which this children's movie opens with them trying to murder a seal, which is just great. Yeah. And there's no reason for any of it. Like what? And then he's like passing by this girl polar bear who I guess we're supposed to know that they have a thing or something, and then he catches a seal and he starts relaying his life story, and it's like the film does not set these characters up at all. Why should I care about any of these things?
You didn't like the part where he says to the seal, "You better run away before I eat you."
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't like that? Wait, what about? I'm sorry, listen, I saw this movie, okay, I want to be fully upfront. Okay, obviously this is a god-awful movie, don't get, like, no shit. This is, like, the most bottom-of-the-barrel fucking shit to have ever hit theaters. It's honestly unbelievable that it was in theaters.
It is close to, if not the worst thing I've ever seen.
Okay, that's a stretch for me, but I will say that, when I saw this film, I saw it with two of my friends. We have a bad movie group, and there are few films which we had as much of a blast watching in theaters as Norm of the North. And all I can think back to when you talk about the opening scene, now the animation, let's be fully frank with this, is just some of the worst I've like ever seen in a fully animated like theatrical film.
God, especially the human characters.
Oh, dear Lord. Well, that's just character design. I mean, well, and the villain moves around like he's a fucking noodle. And so does, like, everybody who are humans. But, like, everything has this horrible sheen over it. Like, it just looks so fake. And like, the lip syncing? What lip syncing? I don't know if you noticed that, but it almost looks like it was dubbed. Like, the lip sync doesn't match up in the slightest. But anyway, I remember when we were watching the opening scene, my jaw was literally dropped during this opening scene. And both my friends kept looking over at me and they were cracking up. And it took me a while to process this movie to the point where I could start laughing at it, because I genuinely couldn't believe what I was watching. Like, the animation in this opening sequence, you've got a lot of motion, so it looks awful because they do not do motion well. The particle effects, the bear running around, the seal running around, the lip syncing, Rob Schneider's voice acting, just everything. I was in awe by the opening to this film. And the best part is that it sets up Norm's character as this guy who struggles with the fact that he can't be a polar bear. But is this really a central theme of the movie going on? No, it's really not. It's just kind of a thing because that has to happen in a kid's movie with the talking animal. Because he can talk to people and the other bears can't. Isn't that it?
Yes.
And it's like, why do you struggle with this? Like, what?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I wanted to mention that, no joke, there were like 5 kids movie cliches within the first 15 minutes of this film, and really none of them pan out to mean anything over the course of the film.
Yeah, like the love interest who is only ever shown again at the very end.
Yeah, this freaking anarchist bear love interest that he has, which is, she's like, go burn it down, become the king.
Yeah,
and for whatever reason, the polar bears are kings of the north, and Norm is going to be king or something. That's another thing.
Steven, I feel like you're making this female love interest sound like she has more of a character than she actually does.
That's true. She really has no character. Her head is also gigantic. It's like terrifyingly gigantic.
And she looks like an alien. So does everybody else, but she looks like an alien.
So I want to give a couple quotes that I really enjoyed. Too much care and not enough scare is a quote that's uttered. What happened to Grandpa, Socrates?
When was that?
Is something I didn't think would be uttered. One guy is in a bear costume, and sexily he says, bear, 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 bear. The little girl, whose mom is a marketing executive, says, Mom was not the only one to study marketing. Also, I want to say something that really caught me off guard. Gabriel Iglesias plays 2 characters in this movie. 2 different characters. Bill Nighy is in this movie, which you would think he would have better things to do, but apparently not.
Yeah.
A seal is literally murdered, so that happens as well. A whale eats a seal, which is great.
It does happen.
I just want to take a step back and think about the plot here.
Okay.
Because honestly, okay. So let's put some spoilers up. Maybe now spoiler time.
Okay.
Just for all those who are really Norm of the North, don't want it spoiled for you. All right. So the general plot of the film, if you could call it a plot, is that humans are coming to the north. They're tourists. Well, now they're starting to build development in the north. So Norm doesn't like this. There's some environmental message that the movie tries to shoe in, I think, is what it's going for. And so what Norm does, so they build development. There's a big head honcho who is trying to sell development in the Arctic. And so they go to film a commercial there to sell homes. And then Norm kind of undermines that and then decides to go back to New York with the marketing executive to become the spokesperson for this company so that way he can save the Arctic. Mm-hmm. So what I want to ask you is, what was his plan? Because they're like the marketing exec like takes a moving photo or a moving picture and Norm's like trying to tackle her or whatever, and they love it. They're like, yeah, we need that. We need like a polar bear. And his Bill Nighy bird buddy is like, Norm, you're the only one who can save us. You have to do this. You have to go. And he's like, oh yeah, I guess I do. But it's like, go to do what? What is the plan? What are you expecting to happen?
I think he was trying to like sabotage it. Like he was gonna like. Doesn't he give a speech saying we need to save the Arctic or whatever?
Yeah, and no one believes him, and they say, "No, you're a liar," and they laugh at him.
I God, I don't care. This movie's so fucking terrible. You know what's funny? Okay, you were talking about quotes, and I'll leave the spoiler tag, which we'll probably get back into it, but I just don't want to forget this. I had some quotes that I remember for this film, and I admit I may slightly misquote. Tried to watch a little bit of it to try to remember them. So one that we all really liked when we watched this movie in the theater was when he goes into the house and he sniffs and he says, "Huh, smells like my grandfather." I really liked that one. We really appreciated when he was sad. You had the sad scene with the sad music. And then, at the weirdest timing, a human jumps in. He does like a fucking flip and his arms like flail all over the place. And he says, "Hey, look, it's Norm of the North, King of the Arctic." And then he patiently walks off screen. And it just lingers on that shot. And Norm doesn't even acknowledge that the guy just came up and said that. And
that is a wonderful scene, by the way, because I was going to call that scene out too, because then the next thing that happens, Norm is all sad, a bird poops on him, he gets like covered in water. The marketing lady, I think her name is Vera or something like that.
Or Alien.
She goes up to him and she's like, "Oh, Norm, what? You did such a great job." This is right after I shouldn't say he accidentally. They record his lines in such a way to make it seem like he approves this development in the Arctic.
Yeah.
And the marketing lady goes, "Oh, Norm, what's wrong? You did such a great job." And he's like, "Oh, no, I had a message to send. And now I'm going to say my home." And she's like, "You got to stop with this polar bear thing. You're really getting too into it." Because she obviously doesn't know he's a real bear. Her daughter does, but she doesn't. And then she's like, "Come on, we'll have dinner." He's like, "No, I'm sad." And then she's like, "Come on, we'll have dinner with my daughter." And he's like, "Okay." And then he's happy again and they walk off screen.
Well, it's one of those things where you can tell the writing aspect, the writing process for this film was very plug and play. It was like Mad Libs, practically. Everything you have to have in the most generic kids animated film is in this film, whether it fits or not. It really doesn't matter.
Fart jokes?
Oh yes. Well, one thing that I did find a little odd, and I don't know, I mean, I get it. They thought kids would laugh, but there is a scene in this film where for a minute the lemmings piss into a fish tank. Yeah, it's a minute. It is a minute. And it is just them pissing in a fish tank while the rim looks at them awkwardly. This really happens. This really happens in this film. So I don't know that I've quite seen that before. But besides that, another thing I wanted to point out is you have to have one of these, like, the big bad corporation kind of story, which is really cliched in kids' movies. And, not that it can't be done right, I guess, but, like, how many times have you seen this, But it's somehow worse in this film than any other time I've ever seen it. Because there is literally a line. The main villain says, "No, these houses aren't for you. These houses are for the 1%.
Yes.
The guy says that.
And he calls them like plebeians or something.
Something like that. It is the most this villain has the most on the nose writing I've ever seen.
And I just want to say, and I could really say this about every actor within this movie, but Ken Jeong deserves better than this.
Well, I mean, I guess you can say that about every actor, although I don't know that you would expect better from Rob Schneider.
That's true.
But he does deserve better. I mean, I think that...
This movie has within it a Scarface and a Titanic reference. I don't know who either of those references are for.
Yeah.
Who went to this movie and was like, "Oh, wow, that's like my favorite movie, Scarface." I'm glad it showed up in Norm of the North.
Well, hey, like old movie references is another cliche in kids' movies, so they had to stick them in there somewhere. That's really the answer to any question you could have about this film.
No, really, because there's even a shoehorned in dance number, which
doesn't multiple.
Even make, which the one that I'm specifically thinking of where he's talking to somebody on a talk show.
Oh, yes.
And then he like goes out of the talk show into Times Square, and it's like everyone is there dancing with him, and it literally makes no sense how anyone got there or has anyone know what he's even doing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but they were playing Shut Up and Dance, right?
Yes, so that's the other thing I wanted to specifically mention. I have written down every time. So the first time I wrote down, and it wasn't Shut Up and Dance, it was a different song, but I was like, wow, they got an actual pop song for this movie.
Yeah.
But then I thought about it, and they don't think they played it long enough for them to have actually needed necessarily to get the rights to that pop song. But then they have Shut Up and Dance, which is like the whole song, and it's for that whole dance number. Then they got a third pop song at the end.
Yeah.
And I was like, who signed away the rights to their song for this movie?
How did they have the money for it? Maybe that's where all their budget went.
Doesn't surprise me, because it feels like, especially with that dance number, it feels like, man, we purchased the license to this song, we have to use it somehow.
Oh man, but I will say that dance number was another. Okay, it was that dance number and the guy saying, "Hey, look, it's Norm, King of the North," that actually had my group laughing for way too long, because not only did we start laughing at the absurdity of what we were watching, but then we started laughing at the fact that we had been laughing for nearly 5 minutes and we were still laughing. Now, thankfully, the movie was Norm of the North, and even the kids there were so bored they were like running around the theater. So I don't really think anybody minded that we were making noise. We were trying not to be loud, but God, it was hard.
And that's the thing that I would say about this movie. It's like it assumes that you have zero intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's not even like kid entertaining. Like, this movie is just boring.
Oh yeah.
Nothing happens. It's so slow, and I don't even see how this could hold a kid's interest.
It didn't when I was in the theater. And the thing is, it's like, it's just such a generic story. Like, even a kid would be able to recognize that this is a generic story. You know, like the whole fish out of water thing. And it doesn't even make sense as a fish out of water story, because how the hell does everybody actually believe it's a guy in a bear suit? Like,
right.
I get it. It's a cartoon. There's a certain level of suspension of disbelief, but I shouldn't be forcing myself to suspend disbelief. I should just be doing it because the film is doing it for itself. But the whole time I'm just like, how the hell has nobody noticed he's a bear? There was another guy in a bear suit, and it was obviously a bear suit. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, the rules of their world make no sense.
Yeah, maybe if the other guy in a bear suit, maybe if his technology was so good, it like actually looked like a bear, like it was nearly on par with Norm, then it could have made some sense. But wasn't it like floppy and shitty, and he was like obvious?
You could clearly see the zipper.
Yeah.
I mean, and the other thing I would say about the rules making no sense is, okay, so Norm, is a bear that no one knows is a bear, and then they love him because he becomes this marketing icon, right?
Yeah.
And so, just as you mentioned, people come up to him on the street, and you're like, oh, you're the Norm of the North, King of the North, or whatever. Just like Game of Thrones. And then there's a scene near the very end where him and his grandpa escape, and they are on the bridge. And they climb up onto the top of the bridge, and there are people there on the walkway, and they run screaming. And it's like, that does not make any sense. You clearly define that no one knows he's a bear, and everyone loves him. So why are these people running away screaming from him? But at that point, I was just like, this movie better be over.
Yeah.
And thankfully it was.
Yeah.
My favorite was the grandpa died fake out for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, because you have to have the death fake out.
Right.
Well, I will say that this film, the reason I was laughing the whole time is just because all I'm remembering is my experience in the theater with this, which it was amazing. Like, I give this movie all the credit in the world because we had a fucking blast watching this, but this is not a film that I think you're gonna enjoy watching solo. So I think, honestly, if that's what you're... If me laughing at it makes you want to do that, I'd say listen to Steven more than me. But if you have friends to watch this with, this thing is fucking hilarious. Like, let's just get that out of the way. Because I wouldn't necessarily call it like The Room of animation necessarily. Because it's really just lazy more than anything. Like, it's so lazy, it's kind of unbelievable. You know? Like, that's, I think, how I describe it. I don't know if you got the same vibe, but I'm guessing you probably did, because how could you not?
This movie makes the Emoji Movie look like a masterpiece of cinema.
Honestly, yeah. Yeah. It really does.
The last thing I wanted to call out, this is just a small thing, but I saw this and I was like, what is this? So, and we're in spoiler territory. So the Lemmings steal a flash drive from the big bad guy, and that's kind of how they give that to the investors, and the investors are like, oh no, he's corrupt. There is a good 2 or 3 minutes of the bad guy looking at his camera footage, trying to understand how his flash drive was stolen. And he's like playing it and rewinding it, playing it and rewinding it. And then he like zooms in and he pauses and he sees it's the Lemmings. And that's it. There's no reason why he did that. Him finding out it was the Lemmings changed nothing. There was no point to this scene whatsoever. And then he looks at his in-room footage, and it's all fuzzy because and then he looks up at his camera, and they chewed through the cable. And again, there's no reason for this. It does not matter, and it changed nothing.
Yep.
But they spent a good 5 minutes in total on that.
So basically what you're saying is that this film is a classic?
Basically what I'm saying is take that and multiply it by the hour and a half that this film went on for, and none of it mattered. And that's an hour and a half I'm never getting back in my life.
You're welcome. So I think we're...
But with that being said, I would definitely recommend this movie. It's on Amazon Prime, free. Go out, watch it now. Grab some popcorn. You're in for a wild time.
And what do you score it?
I scored a 1 out of 10. Do not, under any circumstances, watch this film.
Yeah, and I'm giving it a 0. I'm gonna give it a 0. I'm gonna give this movie a 0. 0.5. There you go, Norm of the North. I'll give you that little 0.5 to help you out. Yeah, it's just one of the worst of all time. Maybe not like films ever made, but films ever put in theaters.
Yes, for sure.
Definitely one of the worst. Because there are straight-to-DVD animated movies that are probably just as bad. There are probably multiple. But this one made it to theaters, which is just insane. Like, I remember the reason I wanted to see this with everybody is because I saw a trailer for it. I don't even remember with what movie I saw the trailer. And I was just appalled by the trailer. I was like, this looks fucking awful. And then we watched it. And it was fucking awful. So, I recommend it if you have friends to watch it with. I don't if you don't. And that's all I have to say. I still have the spoiler tag up. Who cares? Doesn't matter. No one left for that. Anyway, do you want to get on to the Recs?
If you want to keep your friends, don't do it.
I don't agree. It's very funny. I had a blast. We had a blast. All right, I think we should go to the recommendations, though. Do you think it's time?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'll let you go first since I talked about your rec first.
Okay, I am going to... I'll wait for my... There I am. I am going to recommend to you Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. This is a sci-fi movie by Luc Besson. It came out last year, I want to say. It stars Cara Delevingne and another guy who I don't remember his name.
Dane DeHaan.
Um, Dane DeHaan. That's right.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah.
Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne. Yeah, that's my recommendation.
All right. And I'm recommending an album. The album is called Oil of Every Pearls on Insides, and it's by Sophie. This album came out this year. That's all I'm going to say about it. All right. I gotta do a thing. I did the thing. We're at the ending. So yeah, tune in next
Yay!
time for those exciting. God, I don't want to watch Valerian. I deserve it. I made you watch Norm of the North.
What? What are you talking about? I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. So thank you everyone for tuning in again to our construction podcast. I hope you got all of your construction needs out of this podcast. I really thought if you want to really go back in and dive in, when we were talking about tow trucks, that's a classic classic bit there that you can really dive into and learn up. So with that, just some housekeeping things. We had stated before that we're trying to get these every 2 weeks at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on a Monday. We are still trying to do that. Had some busy schedules within the last weeks and probably within the next upcoming weeks, but as close as possible, we're trying to get there to get these on a little bit more of a regular cadence. So we will try to do that again. So that would be 2 weeks from now, Monday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific time. So look out for that. The other thing is that at one point we talked about potentially finding different formats for this podcast. Don't really have any updates there, but I think that's still something that we are hoping to look into to try to get this on. Keep expanding the listenership for our silly thing that we do here every 2 weeks. So those are my housekeeping things. Liz, do you have anything else?
Yes, it's not related to Get Wrecked necessarily, but I would just like to shill a little bit if that's okay. I want you to buy my Get Wrecked shirt. It has a baseball icon. It's like baseball, and it says Get Wrecked. And I want you to buy that. No, I'm fucking around obviously, but I do actually want to shill. I've got. And I've talked about it a fair deal here, not on Get Wrecked, but I want to bring it up here because some people watch, whatever. I have got a massive video coming out that I worked on so much, I got depressed because I worked on it so much for a week and it sucked and I hated it. But it's coming out within the next few days. It'll be on the Mediocre Editor YouTube channel. That's my second channel. And you can find the trailer for it, I think 2 videos ago. It's the Keith a Cool Guy musical review of My Little Pony, the movie. I considered doing it as a rec to Steve, and I decided against doing that because I don't think that's necessary. But yes, so that's coming out. It stars multiple people. It's basically a movie. If you saw Keith the Cool Guy's Big Adventure and you liked that, then I think you will really like this. This is even longer than that by, I think, a good 20 minutes. And so it's super close to coming out, and that's my update on that.
Okay, so with that, those were our thoughts. Those were our recommendations. Get wrecked.